sometimes it's, less about the words. One thing that I really liked when I would see Jacob speak every week is I would find that I would listen to it multiple times sometimes, kind of almost tune in and out to different parts, and so the same lecture would have a very different theme as different things resonated. And so I guess if something was choppy, that was the universe saying, no, don't listen to this right now. Your office. Cool! Tell them to give us our bandwidth back. Practicing more yoga is, that when I first was looking for a yoga studio, I wanted something that was really spiritual. And then I discovered after going for a few times that actually that they work on different levels. And so sometimes you just need enough words to get you into a space, and then you can share a vibration. And even, too much words can be distracting. I've been putting so much energy into word flow or into ideas that I was getting out of touch with non-cerebral spirituality, with physical experience, as well as interacting with the world and nature and things like that. The bandwidth in my head is always off, so it seems fine to me, says Joe. I want to teach. The other thing that I had the awareness of this at the conference was I was away at lunch and they were going to be coming back, and so I said, well, I had an idea for a talk of new things to talk about, some new topics, and as I was waiting for people to come from lunch, I'm like, well, I'll tell some old stories that people that may already know. Some of my favorite stories about Grandpa, about Crapper Cone, and things that I think. And then I looked into the crowd and saw some faces that I know have been there as I've told those same stories, 4 or 5 times. And I had this like, I ripped, that's a Jip, and I should give him something fresh. And then I had this kind of epiphany that was really good for me. I was like, wait a minute. I went to a yoga class 2 hours ago, and I wasn't sitting there going like, oh God, downward dog. Downward dog. No, you practice things, and these spiritual emotional practice is just as a physical practice. And in fact, even something you wouldn't think, oh my gosh, they're playing their hits again. You'd be like, yay, encore, I loved it. Because there's nuances to it, and it feels good to re-experience something that resonates. And so I released a lot of feeling, repeating. Thank you for being here, Clay Chica. See what other things happened at Ignite. I did not bring the Hugmobile. Exactly, Jay. some books, are hard to read a second time, and same with some movies. And some things are things that you need to just glance at all the time. Like, I look over the Tao Te Ching all the time. Reminder, and especially things about the spiritual nature. That's something that came out a lot this weekend too. Is that these are by and large people that have a very dedicated physical practice. There's this couple I talked to that they practice 6 hours a day, and you're like, okay, I get it. You guys are amazing. Like, I don't know how people move like that. It's kind of like watching Cirque du Soleil, where you're like, wait, you have the same genetic background as this thing? Because I can't. But while people are very used to dedicating time to physical practice, or practicing an instrument, or practicing anything physical or skill-based, even to think in terms of practicing being happy, or practicing being at peace, or practicing being joyful. People often point to meditation as the tool to do that, and that is a huge one. But there's to practice questioning our stressful thoughts. Now, if you're happy, you just need to practice being present. But if you're unhappy, you need to practice the tools you have to reframe things, or question your thoughts, line, or pump up your gratitude, or whatever the things are, so that you can have the same kind of confidence and mastery of your life, the same way that someone who practices fire 6 hours a day, when they light up, they're not a victim. When we practice these tools, practice, and it requires that, because the world, by and large, unless you live on a farm without electricity, the voices, the messages everywhere. When I was talking with my brother a couple months ago, he had this awareness, because he's a very Zen guy, but he had the observation that it was kind of like, you work on your spirituality, and it's kind of like there's like a spinning, like get closer and closer and closer to the center, so you're less moving around, you get more and more like less wobble, and more centered, and more in truth, and more in truth. But if you stop working and you just stop, the rotation of that wheel will start to notice it. It's just a matter of being caught up in the world, caught up in your responsibilities, caught up in your roles, and all the things that is your life. But unless you're actively practicing, you're going to get out of shape physically, as well as out of shape with your spirituality. It was interesting to talk to people who have such dedicated physical practices, but just almost had no place in their thought of like, well, never even, oh, I guess I could dedicate something to practice being happy. I guess that's not too weird for me, because whereas now I feel like I have a joy budget. I have a certain amount of money that I allow myself each month to spend on coaching, or books, or lectures, or events that I feel is part of. Because when your joy vessel is full, then you don't have to think about what you're doing. Your actions are infused with a certain vibration. At least that's my theory. So we're still having problems, huh? Lame. I mean the technology, not you. Another thing when the person, well, this is kind of told out of order, and I've told the story here, the long version of it, but just in context of this, all of these ideas, and part of the reason I'm saying this out loud is because I'm starting to think about the format of another book, or at least a pamphlet. When I had this epiphany on a mountaintop, where I haven't really had the same experience ever since, but it wasn't like it wasn't a verbal answer. It was like I had suddenly had this. Is not about seeking purpose. The point of life is to experience life, experience the world. We are the nerve cells of God. We receive of this planet. In the grand scheme of the universe, there is so much blackness, darkness, empty space, fire, but we freaking place that we know of so far in the universe. We have water, we have life, we've got flowers, we've got so much, and so our purpose, it seems like a very simple answer. The universe. That is the most simple and the most grand statement that you could make. That's why I say that our job is not to understand, but to have awe and appreciation. Receivers of all this. And so that was kind of given to me as this download when I was in college, as that's the meaning of life. And what's awesome is that everything that I have developed as part of my philosophy since then has been in line with that. Be present, have integrity, align with love. That's simply like a best practices, a way to experience the world as best as possible. Obviously, you got to be present, because if you're all in your head about stuff, then you're not watching. Then you're trying to change the world according to some wacky values that have nothing to do with you. That's a cancerous, poisonous mindset of thinking that, oh, you need to change the world. Aligning with love, again, just that's the next step. Aligning with love, because that can be an act of creation. That can be more than just receiving. That is then the stepping into, okay, how am I an agent of the divine in the world? It can be as appreciating the sun as it's rising. It can be taking on a multinational corporation. It can mean creating a massive sculpture. It can mean making a child laugh. But I still think that is because experiencing the world is not just watching it. As we get good at it, then we get to interact with it. We get to have sex with people. We get to create art. We get to cry when other people have joy. Actions and our victories. And the more I put things, try to put things into, it all falls into that. How to best experience this. I actually think that from that divine one consciousness, it's a very overt choice that we make. There's a part of the Bacchus death prayer from so thrilled with what he'd made, specifically the earth, that he touched some mud and said, "Why don't you get up? I'm going to give you consciousness and let you look around and check this all out. And the mud was like, whoa, oh my God, it's incredible, wow, badass. And then God said, hey, yeah, sweet, glad you like it. Okay, back to being mud. And the mud's like, what? That's it? We get to sit up and be mud and then go back to being mud? God's like, so the universe did not get to sit up and look around. And while I find that comforting, I actually think that it's even deeper than that, because I don't think God touched mud and gave it consciousness. I think the one God consciousness being that single ray which is without omnipotence, which is without the timelessness of a one divine consciousness, it instead has a single perspective on a single point in time and no knowledge of the future unfolding of things. And so that mud gets to experience it like that. That's why it's so awe-inspired. And then when the mud gets put back down, that beam, just like turning off a light, the electricity stays there and the power source. So that choice, that gift of allowing ourselves to be conscious mud, to experience the drama of a lifetime, it's quite literally our purpose. It's quite for ourselves. And I don't mean to brag, but we did an awesome job. And in the same way, some people go to horror movies. And the world is filled with horror as well. All of it is opportunities for experience. And all of it is beyond what a human lifetime can judge as good or bad. So, it's very helpful to have this kind of recalibration with one another where we can try to encourage each other to let go of some of our judgment of ourselves and others, surrender a little bit more, tune in to that love flow, and see what happens. I hope that flow knocks us into connect in this intentional space. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Thank you for adding your energy, being part of the miracle, part of the experience. We get to be, even all the while, it being an aspect of ourselves. That whole namaste is that I recognize that light in you is reflecting the light in me. Thank you for this reminder. Namaste. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. What you gonna do? What you gonna do with all that junk? All that junk inside your trunk? I'll tell you what you're gonna do. Get you drunk. Yes, thank you for stopping in the Love Dojo. I'm gonna try to be back at 6. You came to a realization of forgiveness. It's all just an experience. Yeah, you know, Brighty, that's a, you know, you just said something that Bill Maher, talking about the pilots of 9/11, you know, that, you know, a 9/11 pilot is someone who's going through exactly what we were just talking about that he has these layers of socialization. clouding his divine self. And the socialization is telling him that the world is to take down this, do this dramatic thing. The Unabomber had the same philosophy. Now, if you get deep into spirituality, it can become pretty clear how that can be a These aren't horrible people. These are people who are confused about their true nature. They're living out of integrity with their true selves. So without that integrity, the most courageous or maybe they're perfect, because who are we to know? Whoa, did I just blow your mind? Thank you guys for being here. I hope you have an amazing day. If you're in San Diego, this weekend is First Saturday, so we're going to go out into the streets and honor our possession-limited friends. And sing. Are we stopped?